Ladies and gentlemen, back by popular demand, it is, of course, me, the true host of the Bharat Army podcast. I want to thank you all for all of your messages that you sent through in the week saying we want the true host, Ashish Gadhvi, back on the show. I'm joking. Of course I am. Everybody relax. Isha Acton will be back in the near future, no doubt. But for today, you're stuck with me, unfortunately. I'm Ashish Gadhvi, your host of the Bharat Army podcast. And welcome to today's episode in which we will be picking a World 11 for Test cricket. Now, everyone's been talking about that Michael Jordan show on Netflix. Have you guys seen it, the Michael Jordan show?
Not yet seen it.
Oh, you got to watch it.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Really
Watch it. It's amazing. But everybody knows that Michael Jordan's greatest ever accomplishment was being in Space Jam opposite Bugs Bunny. And in that movie, aliens come down to Earth and challenge Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny and the like to a game of basketball. So we thought, what if aliens came down to Earth and challenged us to a game of Test cricket? So we decided to pick a World 11 through history of who is going to be in the World 11 to take on aliens and save the Earth. Now, we have restricted ourselves a little bit here. We've gone for players from the 90s onwards, so basically players that we would have actually seen play, because Lord knows none of us were around when Don Bradman was in his pomp. So who have we got on the show today? Who are our cricket connoisseurs we got? We've got our regular man, Rav from London. How's it going, Rav?
Yeah, good, Ash. Good to be here. It's going to be a good debate, I think. Maybe some controversy along the way.
Indeed. And I'm not sure, I think either you or Kunal from Mumbai are the most regular people on this show now. So you're almost like part of the furniture now.
Yeah, no, it's been good so far. Some really good debates and really good to chat with some fellow fans.
Lovely. We've also got Abhishek. How's it going, Abhishek?
All good, Ashish. All good. Yeah, looking forward to getting cracking on with this one. I know we've got some very esteemed guests on this one who all know their cricket very well, very knowledgeable. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Speaking of esteemed, we've also got Jinesh on the show from London. How's it going, Jinesh?
And all good. How are you? Nice bank holiday weekend for a debate.
Now, what more could you ask for on a bank holiday weekend than talking about Test cricket, eh? And making his debut on the pod today, or debut, as the Aussies would say, we've got Ash from Essex.
Hi, guys.
Look at him in his shades. Future so bright on this podcast, he's got to wear shades. Look at that.
No, it's just because I've got bad eyes, so it's the glare of the screen.
Yeah. Excuses.
That's my excuse.
So let's get into it then. We're picking a World 11 for Test cricket from the 90s onwards. So let's start with our opening partnerships and our number 3 position. So the top 3 batsmen in our middle order. Let's start with Rav, shall we? Rav, who is in your openers and your number 3?
Yeah, so I went with Sehwag, Graham Smith and Ricky Ponting at number 3. Tough decision at number 3, obviously, with Dravid. But, I mean, we can talk a bit more about Ponting and the kind of well-beater that he was for that whole period of time.
It's a pretty solid opening with those guys. Pretty solid opening there. Abhishek, let's have your openers in number 3.
So for my opening partnership, I've actually gone with 2 completely different players to Rav. I've gone with a combination of Matthew Hayden and Rahul Dravid. Now, I know it's not his normal position, Dravid opening the batting, but I just simply could not leave him out of the side. And with the likes of, the fantastic players that are going to be coming down later in the order, I wanted to fit Dravid in there. So I've gone for a bit of a contrast with my styles in opening batting. You've got Hayden, who's a bully, really intimidating. You get fast bowlers from around the world saying on record how much they used to hate bowling to the guy. Averages over 50, and he'll be the aggressor in my opening partnership. And supported by Rahul Dravid, who, the wall for India for a period of time, people were talking about him as even more important than Sachin was to Indian cricket. So I just had to fit him in there. And number 3 position, I'd agree with Rav, Ricky Ponting, who'd also captained my side. He was, fantastic batsman throughout his career. Scored bucket loads of runs. I think he's number 2 on the all-time leading behind Sachin. And he led a great Australian side. And people now, the likes of Rohit Sharma, you hear talking about how much of an influential figure Ponting is when he's in the Mumbai Indians dressing room, how much he's respected, how much he knows about his cricket and how to get the best out of people. So I think he's a natural choice for captain. So that's my top 3.
Yeah, Dravid opening is a bit of an eye opener on your list there. But like you said, you've got to fit him in there somehow, some way, surely.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough one. Like I said, he's known for coming in at number 3, but he's come into positions where India sort of 3-for-1, 10-for-1 many a time. I still think he's capable of playing and seeing off that new ball. And it's more a question of there's so many great players of what to choose from. I just had to find somewhere to shoehorn him in. I couldn't leave him out. So for me, considering that in terms of the opening positions, there weren't as many in terms of fierce competition as there would be for middle order, I just felt that, Dravid can pick of Alistair Cooke and Graham Smith, or honourable mentions, who've done fantastic in their career. But for me, I've got to put Dravid in there.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that. Rahul Dravid is my favourite cricketer ever of all time. So I'll be happy to see him in any lineup. Jinesh, let's go with your openers and number 3.
So I've gone for Matty Hayden and Graham Smith. And my number 3 would be Rahul Dravid. So me and Rav, obviously, we agree on Smith. For me, it was a tough call between Hayden and Sehwag. Sehwag, emotionally, I would have picked him. I did it on the fact that when he was good, he was very, very good. But when he was poor, he was very, very poor. He had one tour in England in 2002 and then didn't really do much in England. So Hayden, he plays spin well, had a fantastic tour in India. So that's why Hayden picked Sehwag. Now, Ponting Dravid, again, very, very, very difficult choice. However, I've always felt that Rahul Dravid, between the years he played Test cricket, he was the best Indian Test batsman in India, including better than Sachin Tendulkar in Test match cricket.
Oh,
right?
boy.
Now, the thing with Tendulkar, I once read something about the Indian, a spiritual mountain, Kailas, where they said, you're not allowed to climb that mountain, right? The reason why you can't climb that mountain is because they said if someone was to conquer that mountain, right, they would conquer people's souls. And that's what I think about. Once you say Tendulkar's not the best Test match batsman, right, you're not looking at stats, you're not looking at batsmanship, you are looking at conquering people's souls. And that's why I had to pick Dravid ahead of Ponting. Ponting also came in at 80-for-1. You look at his record against England or in India, tough conditions, very, very poor. So Dravid for me, tough runs, awesome cricketer. 2011 300s, I watched all 3 of them ball by ball, fantastic player. So couldn't drop him.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like I said, he's my favorite ever of all time above Sachin Tendulkar. So, I completely wholeheartedly agree with you. Ash, your openers and your number 3, please.
So it's a difficult choice, obviously. It's there's so many fantastic players over the years that we've had the pleasure of watching both live and on the screen. I put myself in the shoes of a selector and also an opposition captain. So if I had to play a team, who I wouldn't want in my team, in the opposite team, my number 3 picks himself. For me, Ricky Ponting is just the person who brings to a squad, a team, a setup that I don't think the others, sort of on balance, can do the same. He bats for fun, and he has done everywhere. He's a born leader, and he's led a team of characters, of at times, through some big names in the dressing room. He knows how to handle, players. He also led by example. I mean, he was ruthless. At the time when he was playing, some will also say that he's a nicer guy now than he was then. I mean, he's been described as being almost a horrible person on the pitch. But I think to win games and to take that team to where it was, a lot of that sort of accolade has to go to Ponting. So for me, I left out Dravid in my team, and it hurt me a lot because, like Jin, like yourself, I rate Dravid higher than Sachin in a Test match. I would always give my bat as a number, someone to Dravid. But I put Ricky Ponting as 3 again as my skipper. Now my opening pair, again, on the basis that who I don't want to be going out to play, I put Hayden in because Hayden was just, for me, one of the sort of toughest guys anywhere to play against. He would absolutely take your sort of score to somewhere, and he's brutal. Now, so Hayden, number one. Number two for me. Now this might be controversial because I don't actually think he was that great a player, but I put in Sehwag. Now the reason I put in Sehwag was he was an enigma. Now, like Jin said, that guy can turn up and absolutely tear you apart, or he can play like today's pant, if you like, who literally doesn't have a clue, doesn't know where his stumps are, doesn't know where the bat or the ball is. A typical, should I say it, mentality was just like, he played with his heart more than his brains. And where he failed often, I think, he thought about the game too much. If you told him to do this or that or think about a shot, then he's going to not get you runs. If you just tell him, listen, we'll go out there, just do what you got to do, close your eyes and hit the ball like you can, then that guy, for me, is fearsome. He would scare bowlers. So in a test match, if you've got Hayden and Sehwag opening up, I'll tell you something, as a bowler, doesn't matter if you're, Wazim Akram or Graham McGrath, you're going to have a little bit of a wobble. And that's what I think a great test team needs up top. The risk is obviously you're going to be like one down for not many in the first over, because he can get out first couple of balls as we've seen him do, So that's my opening pair, Hayden, Sehwag and Ricky Ponting, number 3 as a captain.
Well, I've got to say, these are all really, really formidable names that you've all put forward. I think anybody would be happy to have any of these three in their top 3. Now, we've kind of got a little bit of a split in the room here, really. 3 out of 4 of you have gone with Hayden. So, I can pretty much assume that he'll make it into the final lineup of this. 3 out of 4 of you have also gone for Ricky Ponting at number 3. However much we obviously love Rahul Dravid so much, but, with Dravid versus Ponting at that number 3 position, it does look like Ponting will probably get the edge. But 2 of you have gone for Graham Smith at the opening, and 2 of you have gone for Virender Sehwag. So, Abhishek's gone for Rahul Dravid, but, Sehwag and Graham Smith have got a lot of mentions in there. So if we're having to pick one of these guys to get into our final lineup, Graham Smith or Virender Sehwag, who's it going to be? Rav, let's start with you. You picked Graham Smith and Virender Sehwag. So if you had to pick one of them, who would it be?
I picked Smith, Ponting and Sehwag. The reason I picked both Sehwag and Smith is because it's a good combination of both solidity and kind of tough top order runs from Smith, and a guy that travelled well also and got runs everywhere, and also captained very well overseas. And also the fear factor of Sehwag, who, in my mind, changed the way that captains think about setting up a game, because they always knew that if you had a Sehwag on a final day, like a Chennai 2008, he could actually go and get you to a start and therefore chase a huge, total of almost 400. So if it was me personally, given that you're going with Hayden, I would probably say Smith in that regard, because I feel that with Hayden, you're already getting, as the guys have said, that brute force, great player spin. It doesn't maintain kind of left hand, right hand, but I don't think that's a huge deal these days. So I would probably go Smith, Hayden.
And Smith, he scored tough 4th innings runs as well, right? Against England, I think he had a double century. I'd probably go for that Smith, Hayden. But for me, it's Hayden or Sehwag. They're the similar type of players, I think.
Yeah, Hayden and Smith sounds pretty formidable. But, I'd like to also query you guys a little bit. Abhishek, there's one name that you mentioned in there, which I'm surprised, to be honest, that nobody else mentioned in your honourable mentions, and that's Alistair Cooke. When you look at, Alistair Cooke's record, hey, come on, laugh if you want, but look at the guy's record. Alistair Cooke has a great record in Test cricket. Alistair Cooke surely would probably get a mention in this above Graham Smith, wouldn't he?
Have you seen the averages? I think
they're roughly the same, I think.
No, I think Graham Smith is nearing 50, low 50 or high 40s, while Cooke is, I think mid 40s. So
I think Cooke's also played a few more games as well than Smith, who kind of cut his Test career short.
Cooke had a great spell where he was really good between 4 or 5 years. And I think a lot of reasons why Indians in general think Cooke's a great player is because he has a lot of runs against India from his debut onwards. But if you look at him against, barring the away series against Australia, not many runs. South Africa, not many runs. But yeah, against India, he's formidable. So, and he's Englishman. Maybe we're biased. I don't know.
I think
Also,
go on, Rav, I'll let you go.
sorry, I was going to say, I kind of set this up as a team to go and win against potentially the best team of that era. And I just felt somebody like a Smith over a Cooke gives you, I mean, they're both very nuggety kind of players. But like Jin said, I just feel that Smith was consistently, also a great leader and got those really tough runs. There's no doubting the weight of Cooke's record, a leading run scorer, knighted, etc. But maybe it's just styles, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Rav. Like, Alistair Cooke certainly does deserve, I think I mentioned, which is why I mentioned him earlier, but I think he had a bit of an uncertain period in his. He's had a few ups and downs, and I think he's had a few more ups and downs than a few of the other players had. I think the likes of Graham Smith have been a bit more consistent, although his runs may not suggest it. But that's again a longevity point. Like, Cooke played 160 tests. I'm not sure how many tests Smith played, but I know it's nowhere near as many. I mean, I'm still going to try and fight my corner on this one because I think lower down the team, I'm going to be a bit less sort of aggressive about it, and I'll be a bit more willing to accept others, I think. But on this one, I feel so strongly about it that I just think, Smith's had 2 votes, like you said, for the top 3. So has Sehwag. But Dravid's also had 2 votes in the top 3. So I still think we need to consider him.
Hey, listen, I've got his name down on the paper with a big star next to it because, if you're having a World Test 11 without Rahul Dravid in it, you've got problems, in my opinion.
I mean, I'll just be interested to see what everyone else thinks about having Dravid in there ahead of Smith and Sehwag, knowing about what he's offered to not just Indian cricket, but world cricket as sort of one of the sort of leaders in the game for the last sort of 20 years.
Personally, I don't think there's anyone who will doubt the ability of Rahul Dravid as a cricketer. Especially that of a batsman. It's just when you talk of your first 2, then I don't think many people would automatically assume Dravid.
Fair point.
Yeah, so if we're sticking to the first 2, then for me, Dravid definitely doesn't make the first 2. That's not against his ability to play cricket.
There's one more thing I want to query with you guys in terms of this top 3. Now, pretty much across the board, apart from Jinesh saying Dravid at 3, we've said Ponting and what else can you say about Ricky Ponting? He's pretty much a shoe-in to that position. However, all of these players that we've mentioned so far are all players that have retired now. And there's one guy out there in the world of Test cricket currently still playing who I think when his career is up, we could be saying he was a better number 3 than Ricky Ponting. And I think it's Steve Smith. And I'm just wondering what you guys think that, is it still too early to give him that moniker? Or would you say that, he could potentially creep his way into a number 3 position in this team?
If you're looking at a team now, then he would absolutely be ahead because the guy he's a beast of a player at number 3, right? He battles, he gets runs. Sometimes it doesn't come easy to him. He had a long period off. He came back and, he was like a different player. That just shows the class and the ability of someone to come back from, almost a traumatic situation, a year out of the game, banned or whatever it was. So, yeah, he would. But if you're looking at the 30-year period, for me personally, I'd want to watch him for a few more years to see what he can actually do. No doubt if we were to have this podcast in, let's say, another 5 or 10 years, he would definitely be pushing Ponting for sure, Dravid for sure. So, I think that's the only reason it's a bit early, in my opinion, to call him at the minute. Same with players like Williamson, players like that. They're great players, but at the minute, even controversially, like someone like VK, there's a lot of conversation. But at the moment, I don't think Smith makes the greats as yet.
And
Abhishek, just quick one-word answer. Technically, who's the better, Ponting or Smith?
Ponting or Graham Smith?
Or Steve Smith.
Sorry. Well, Steve Smith's technique isn't perfect by any means, but
Have you seen the way he leaves the ball and does that weird thing? What are you talking about?
If you're
That's
talking
amazing.
about technique, sound technique, then I'd have to go with Ponting. But like Ash said, they're both great batsmen in their own right, and by the end of Smith's career, he will be in that bracket of Ponting. But for me, at the moment, it's still Ricky Ponting.
Fair enough. Now, we're going to move on to the middle order now, getting into arguably, some might say, the most important portion of your batting lineup. Now, I'll tell you who's the first one I'm going to come to out of you guys, and that's none of you. Because, ladies and gentlemen, spoiler alert, coming up right now. 4 people on this panel were asked to send me their batting lineups before the podcast started so that, I could have them all lined up in front of me. And all 4 of our cricket connoisseurs have gone for the exact same middle order. All 4 of you. Sachin at 4, Lara at 5, Kallis at 6, Gilchrist at 7. All 4 of you, the exact same middle order. Now, I am going to query some stuff in there. Don't worry. You're not going to get away with it so far. But Rav, I mean, those 4 is the reason why we've gone for all 4 of them, not just because they're just undisputed all-time greats at Test cricket.
I was really close to choosing a different side, and I picked one, and then I changed it to this. So my original side did not have Kallis, it did not have Gilchrist, it had Sangakkara and a 5th bowler. Yeah. The reason I then changed it
me too.
was but the reason, and I'm sure we all thought this, the reason I changed it was because I just didn't see that a 5th bowler would be bowling enough overs to justify the selection, and therefore I went with Gilchrist, and obviously the brand that he plays. I mean, Sangakkara, on the forums, etc., we all wax lyrical about Sangakkara, and as a pure batsman, he obviously makes it. Interestingly, though, he averages under 42 as a wicketkeeper batsman.
Correct.
And over 60 as a batsman without the gloves. So that slightly went against him. But look, Tendulkar, by common consensus, the best kind of batsman of that generation. Brian Charles Lara played the best innings of that generation, as far as I'm concerned. And then obviously Kallis, the leading all-rounder in terms of weight of runs, number of wickets, catches taken, etc. So you can see why it was unanimous, but you can also see why we probably all shifted it and then moved it as well.
Go ahead, Jayesh.
The point on Sangakkara, so I had him in my team ahead of Gilchrist. And you're right, when I did the more research, the differential in average as a wicketkeeper to when he's a batsman alone is massive. So that swayed it. I was going to have the 5th ball. I was going to have Murli in my team, which I don't, ahead of Kallis, right? But then I thought to myself, my bowling's quality. I don't need that extra bowler. So Kallis, 3-dimensional cricketer, arguably amazing. The number of runs as high as Ponting, kind of Tendulkar, and then he's got the wickets on top. So,
I mean, if I had to pick this lineup, I must say I'd go with Sangakkara over Gilchrist, just because I think that it's not just about what he brings with the gloves and the bat. It's also the cricketing mind that he brings to it as well, which I think he probably got the edge over Gilchrist, I would argue.
Well,
but go on, Abhishek. There's one thing I want to bring up as well.
Go on.
There's one cricketing brain who could play in that position, who no one has picked, and that's the great man MS Dhoni. Does anyone here think that he could have a position in that number 7 spot?
No.
I'm a big Dhoni fan. Test cricket, no.
Yeah, same.
I think he was a poor leader as a test skipper. He had a tough job where the team was in transition, but I would not have him.
See, I'm actually surprised at the conversation that Kallis is under consideration. For me, I would have Kallis out of all the 11 players in my team. He would probably be my 2nd or 3rd choice straight on that sheet. I mean, the man scored, as many tons almost as Sachin has. So if Sachin's a great batsman, this guy is not that much behind him. 1. 2, you throw him the ball and he's got wickets all over the place. Now, if you've got a player like that in our 30-year period, how he's even under discussion, that actually surprises me, because the guy has scored as many runs almost or tons. Let's look at Test centuries. Sachin's at what, like 46, 47, something like that. And I think Kallis must have done at least 40 plus. I don't know the exact number, but he's not far behind. Now that is humongous as a player, as a batsman, and as a bowler as well. So to even consider his position or to try and replace him with a fifth bowler or another batsman, for me, that didn't even come into it. He was, in fact, one of the first players I put down on my team sheet, like straight in.
True. Abhishek, what do you think?
I agree with Ash. I think Kallis gets in on his own right almost on all three disciplines. I think he would be one of the most esteemed all-rounder that has ever played Test cricket, really. I think he's that highly thought of in, amongst his peers and amongst, fans as well. So Kallis, he's got to be in there for me. And, Tendulkar and Lara, you can't argue with either. We've all gone for it unanimously. Sachin, probably one of the greatest ever to have played the game, alongside with Lara as well. So I think, again, you can't really say much to break those two up in the middle order. You mentioned Dhoni in at 7. For me, I don't think he gets close to Gilchrist or Sangakkara. I didn't look too much into the stats on the wicketkeeper. Usually I sometimes, do look into my numbers. But for me, I think Gilchrist over Sangakkara, he might not have scored as many test runs as Sanga did, but I just think he changed the way wicketkeeper batsmen were sort of looked at in test cricket. I think he was so exciting to watch. And once you've got that class solidity in the middle order, Ponting, Tendulkar, Lara, Kallis, it would be nice to have something explosive at number 7 as opposed to Sangakkara, who's a little bit more classical. And he's a fantastic batsman. Again, for me, gets an honourable mention. But Gilchrist was just so dynamic and exciting. And I think he, like I said, he was a pioneer as a wicketkeeper batsman and what he did for that position in cricket and the importance about how they should be aggressive in their batting as well to add value.
Well, I want to talk to you about Kallis really quickly, actually, because obviously Kallis, as you've said, one of the first names down on the team sheet. But like we said about Steve Smith earlier, that he could be a player who could easily take Ricky Ponting's position years down the line if he continues in the same vein that he is now. There's another player out there at the moment who is playing pretty well in Test cricket. He bats a bit, he bowls a bit. He's Jinesh's best friend. He is, of course, Mr. Ben Stokes. Do you think he could be in this team when he's retired in that place of Kallis?
I don't know in place of Kallis, but maybe in place of, I don't know, someone else. See, when I was looking at the composition of my team, and quite clearly, even the fellow lads here, we seem to have chosen people who we grew up watching and who have finished their careers, as opposed to current Test match players. Like, VK, he's not even got a mention yet.
Nope,
right
not
now,
a mention
he's
at
the
all.
best, batsman in the world. Maybe not Test batsman, but best batsman. So I don't know, maybe, if we were to have this podcast in 5-6 years' time, Ben Stokes may get a mention. But for me, Kallis, sheer volume of runs, as Ash said, at one time he was bowling faster than any other Indian Test bowler in the world, right? And he was like 4th change. So it's very difficult to argue against.
Looking at these names as well, though, is there not also the other argument that, the 90s kind of was the best era of cricket? I may be a little bit biased saying this because we all kind of grew up in that era, but the 90s was an incredible era for batsmen and bowlers.
Statistically, it was certainly the hardest. In the 90s, only 3 players averaged over 50. That's now changed to multiple players. You started to see Amla, Clark, etc. start to average over 50. So the reason I went for that, and I think Kallis, you've got to look at the conditions where he scored his runs. He scored his runs on very tough South African pitches, which did a lot on day one. Where, I think honourable mention keepers, you may look at somebody like McCullum as well, who certainly played the game in a way that Gilchrist did. And towards the end of his career, we all know, he got a 300 against us. So there's potentially the opportunity for him as a backup there as well.
And no one's mentioned Kevin Peterson. He was a top player. He was a top batsman.
But personally, he was what I consider a luxury player, because everything he did was good. He won games for England, often on his own. You know, he could bat. But to put him in the list of greats, I think he's far away from that, in my opinion. You know, very talented player, but
let's see. Let's see who else has named some greats then. When we move on to our bowlers, shall we?
Before we move on, can I just mention about Gilchrist and the thought process? See, what I didn't realise until looking a bit further into Gilchrist, at 7 or thereafter, I think he's the highest scorer of runs in Test cricket.
Yeah, that's
or
correct,
something like this.
Yeah.
Now that guy, and then we forget that his actual technical ability as a gloveman. Now, if you're going to go for a gloveman in a best 11, if we're going to choose the best batsman, we're going to choose the best bowler, you've got to go for technically one of the best keepers. Now, from what we've seen, he's kept to Shane Warne. Now, to keep to Shane Warne, all pitches, all conditions, the guy's a genius behind the stumps for me. And also then you've got McGrath, then you've got all these other quickies. So we have to not forget the ability of a gloveman to do his job as a gloveman. And then he gives you runs as well. So
there was one point on Gilchrist I was going to make, actually. Just it was a luxury to have him at 7, because in a way, very few sides have 4 bowlers that are so potent that you don't need a 5th. So most keepers obviously bat 6. So I think obviously he was amazing, but it's because he had the bowling as well that enabled him to drop down and enabled them to play an extra batter, you know, Hussey through later part of his career as well.
Yeah,
indeed. Right. Well, you know, we're just talking about those bowlers. So Ash, I tell you what, since you were talking about Gilchrist, you know, keeping to all of those bowlers, why don't you give us your list of bowlers?
My list of bowlers, I went for, again, my cap is I'm going to throw, you know, to the gauntlet. I want to win this game. Okay, what bowlers am I going to put? I'm going to always, all day long, put Shane Warne. That guy could get you wickets pretty much everywhere. He didn't play that much in India from memory. So we can't really, you know, judge him about performances, particularly in India. But everywhere else, I mean, that guy was just like, you know, you can't, for me, have a World 11 Test team without Warne. Then I thought, you know what? How about Murli? Now, I would have went with Murli as well, because those two, just the sheer number of wickets they've got everywhere, the sheer you know, the level of sort of mystery, the guile, batsmen are going to get scared to play these 2 world-class players in one team from each end. If you imagine, you know, you've got Warne on one end, you've got Murli on the other end. They could bowl for you the whole day, and it will be tough for many, many teams to stay alive against these guys. You know, whether it's a day 2 pitch or a day 5 pitch, I just don't see anyone, you know, surviving against these if you need to win a game. So I'd definitely play with them too. So Warne and Murli make my team. Wasim Akram, I'll definitely have him there. Now, the reason why I have Wasim in there is I just think the guy was a magician. He could do things with a cricket ball that I personally haven't seen anybody do before him or after him. Now, you're looking at, you know, some great Pakistanis like Sarfraz, Imran, you know, Waqar. These guys could bowl, you know. I mean, they were geniuses. You know, they have a way of doing things. Yes, it was all the reverse swing because the English or the Indians or whoever it was, they didn't understand reverse swing back in the day. So it was kind of made illegal. And then all of a sudden, you know, everyone learned how to do it. And then it became, the best thing since sliced bread. But these guys were doing it when they were probably 5 or 6 years old. So for me, Wasim Akram, left arm over, you know, he was just a genius with a bowler. So I had him, in fact, the first pick. So I had him first, Warne second, and then I had Murli. And in my final one, you cannot just leave out Glenn McGrath. Now, yes, it's loaded with Aussies, but Glenn McGrath, you know, the height, you know, the in-cutter, just the style, and the guy was relentless. He could hit, you know, it's cliche, but you put a 10 pence point, you know, coin on the pitch. I reckon out of 6, he can hit it 8 times. You know, he was that good. So for me, they're my 4 bowlers: Murli, Warne, McGrath, and Wasim.
Oh, great lineup. Jinesh, let's have your lineup.
So I've got 3 of the 4, same as Ash. So I've got Shane Warne, Wasim Akram, Glenn McGrath, pretty much for the same reasons that Ash has mentioned. I've gone for an extra pace bowler in Curtly Ambrose ahead of Murli, primarily just because I don't see games going to, you know, day 4, 5 with Ambrose, McGrath in my lineup with Shane Warne. And I just love the way, you know, Ambrose used to terrorize batsmen, terrorize the English while I was growing up. His celebration, you know, I was toying between Ambrose, McGrath, and Dale Steyn. Dale Steyn was the one that I was kind of thinking, you know, how can I fit him in? Wasim Akram, you know, I wasn't budging from Wasim, but in the end, I think it's just, I've just watched Glenn McGrath and Ambrose more than I have Dale Steyn. So them two got the pick ahead of Steyney. But otherwise, you know, 3 of the 4 same as Ash.
And, you know, I think that because so many people talk about that great West Indies team of the 70s, I think it is actually easy to forget Ambrose and Walsh as well and the things that they did during their era of the 90s. I think it's a great pick because, you know, you look at Jofra Archer now, he's not too dissimilar a bowler to those two. And people, you know, wax lyrical about Jofra Archer and how great he is. But Ambrose in particular was doing it. Some people do, not everyone. But, you know, Ambrose is pretty much doing what Jofra Archer did, but like tenfold back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And he had some amazing spells. You know, the thing with, the thing with Glenn McGrath, Shane Warne, right, usually they were backed by big runs on the board. Courtney Walsh and Ambrose, they played in a weakened West Indian team. You know, you had Chanderpaul, you had Lara, but in the main, they sometimes they had to defend low scores, and Ambrose and Walsh would, you know, defend low scores, and they'd defend them beautifully. So that's why I picked Ambrose.
Abhishek, let's have your bowling lineup.
So I've gone for the partnership of Warne and Murali as well. So I've gone for 2 spinners. I was thinking long and hard about the composition of the team, and I nearly swayed to the composition that Jinesh had, which was having 3 seamers. And if I was going to pick 1 spinner, I would have gone for Warne. But then having a look at it a second time, thinking about the fact that Kallis can bowl as a 3rd seamer and bowl very useful overs, I was thinking I cannot leave Murali out. I just think the amount of devastation he's caused to batsmen around the world. 800 test wickets, that will never be achieved again, in my opinion. I don't think, as long as the game played. I just think complete, you know, freak of nature. Even though I would have picked Warne ahead of him, if I only had to pick 1 spinner, I'd pick Warne, but I just can't leave Murali out as well. So I'm going for both of them. You know, Ash has spoken really well about how great a bowler Shane Warne is. So, you know, I don't need to say too much more on that. I think that's unanimous probably amongst all of us, I'm guessing. And then for 10-11, I've gone for two seamers. Glenn McGrath, again, I think probably the best fast bowler that's ever played Test cricket. You know, his accuracy was second to none. And I think best batsmen in the world say that they'll have trouble facing him, can't get away, always picks up wickets at the top of the order. And for me, he's probably one of my favourite fast bowlers growing up. And the second spot goes to Dale Steyn in my team. I think, like some of the guys said, I think Wasim gets an honourable mention. But I think for me, I think Wasim played more of his cricket in just the 90s, whereas, you know, growing up was sort of more 2000s and 2010s watching Test cricket. I was a bit young in the 90s, but, you know, Wasim, as great as he looked, I watched more of Dale Steyn, and I just think he's a, you know, fearsome bowler, bowls up to 150. So, you know, he can bring that real pace to the side that maybe Glenn McGrath doesn't bring. So you've got variety in the attack there. Over 440 test wickets, 439 test wickets he's got. So he's up there, you know, second or third ever in terms of test wickets for a fast bowler. You've got Jimmy, McGrath, and I think Dale Steyn's probably one of the next. So for me, if injury hadn't cut short some of his career, I think he would probably had close to 500. So that's the reason why I've gone with my 4: Warne, Murali, Steyn and McGrath.
Yeah, Steyn, of course, the first kind of 2000s era test player who's made it into this list as well. Let's see if Dale Steyn will get into Rav's list.
Yeah, so mine is interesting because I've kind of gone with an approach mixed with everybody that's been said. So my picks were Shane Warne, who would captain my side. I think he would bring a very, very good edge of competitiveness. And also, we've not seen it. So I know he did a lot for Hampshire, but I always thought he was one of the best captains that never captained the Test match, so he's going to captain my side for sure. Then I picked Wasim Akram. The reason I picked Wasim Akram and not another spinner, I've kind of gone into before, but also I just kind of felt that Murali, I would have picked him if I'd have picked Akram, because obviously, you know, left armour, bit of rough there potentially as well for somebody like Murali. So I kind of felt it was both of them, or you can't have Murali. So I picked Wasim Akram. You know, what's not been said about him already? I mean, what he did in the 92 World Cup final, just the ability with the ball itself, but also he's got multiple Test centuries. So obviously there's that batting depth element there as well. I actually thought Waqar Younis was a more deadly bowler, but I think what Wasim did, because it was left arm, was hugely skillful. And then my two fast bowlers are Glenn McGrath, unanimous it seems, just always hit a length, has a great record everywhere in Asia included, and also Dale Steyn. I cannot look beyond Dale Steyn, because I think he's the best fast bowler since Glenn McGrath retired. He's got the best strike rate in the history of Test cricket. As Ab said, you know, injury, if you take that out of the equation, he's a very, very successful bowler. What he's done to India in India, you know, very few bowlers have done. He bowled us out for the first session in the Test match once for 70. So I just think where he can do it, and the speed, the reverse swing, I couldn't look past him. So I've kind of gone for a bit of what everybody else has before, but it's a 3-in-1.
Well, you mentioned about Steyn. Yeah, go on, Jinesh.
Why has no one picked Jimmy?
Well, do you know what? I have him down on my list of players that why he hasn't been picked. And I don't just have him. I also have Stuart Broad, because nobody's picked him either. So Jimmy and Stuart, why have they not made anybody's lists?
You see, I was thinking of like Jimmy. I personally think he's a great bowler, and he has been, you know. But when you up against people like McGrath, when you're up against people like Dale Steyn, when you've got, you know, people like Wasim, you think if you had to face out of those four bowlers, who would you most want to face? I'd want to play Jimmy Anderson all day long. I would not want to face McGrath. I would not want to face Wasim, and I definitely wouldn't want to face Steyn. And that's my thinking.
When you take all the conditions, because this is based on all the conditions. So had you just limited it to like overcast conditions, you know, at Lords like we faced in 2018, it would be Jimmy all day long. But when you know, Jimmy was amazing in England, but he's not that great abroad. While some of the names we've mentioned, you know, Wasim, Steyn, Ambrose, McGrath, you know, all around the world, I think they've had a equally good impact.
Yeah, I agree with Jinesh there. I think Jimmy's a great bowler, but all conditions, I think the other guys trump him. I think Jimmy's got 100 of his 500 Test wickets at Lords, at one ground, a fifth of his Test wickets, which I think is incredible. Like, it's unheard of, really. So I just think in England, he's formidable. And like Jinesh said, if you're picking a team for those conditions, Jimmy might get a few extra points, but I don't think he makes it in ahead of some of the bowlers that we've mentioned.
Now, there's one point I wanna make to you guys. There's one real thing that grinds my goat about this list, looking at everybody's lists. Now, you've all obviously gone with Warne. You know, most of you, I think all of you have gone with Warne. Yep. So Warne is definitely making this list. I think it's fair to say that, you know, Wasim Akram and Glenn McGrath are probably going to make the list as well, because you've pretty much all gone with them as well. But can I just say something controversial for a minute? The comparisons between Shane Warne and Murali. Murali has nearly 100 more wickets than Shane Warne. And, you know, I'm just going to outright say it. If Murali was Indian, we would all be saying he's better than Shane Warne. So why have Shane Warne in this team when you can have somebody who's got 100 more wickets than him?
Because for me, he has 493 of his 800 wickets in Sri Lanka. He has many wickets against Bangladesh and Zimbabwe. Shane Warne, yes, he has many wickets against England. If he was Indian, would he be playing Bangladesh, Zimbabwe? Would he? You know, one thing about the Australians, right? He used to get wickets in Melbourne. You know, just because they got Shane Warne, they're not going to prepare a dust ball at Melbourne. Yes, SCG spins. You know, while with Sri Lanka, you know, with Murali in the team, and you also saw Murali retired. You even had Rangana Heraf taking a lot of wickets in Sri Lanka. So for me, if you're going to be bowling in Sri Lanka, anyone that can tweak it a bit is going to take wickets. While Shane Warne, I mean, in England, you look at the Indian spinners' records against England in England is very poor. But you look at Shane Warne, 35 wickets in a series, spinning it a mile. I mean, awesome bowler.
I think with Warne also, it was the way that he bowled. I just felt that he was more attacking as a bowler. He was always looking. You go back to Trent Bridge in that great 2005 series, barely any runs to play with. Sean Tate comes on, he's gone for 30 in 3 overs. Warne, first ball wicket. And it's just the mentality. And again, that's why I made him captain. Murali's a great bowler. Cheap wickets happen for lots of bowlers. I think, it's probably a bit unfair to say just on him, but I think that with Warne, he gave you an attacking option at all stages of a game. Whereas with Murali, I just felt that it took him slightly longer to get into a game, field placings, etc. Whereas with Warne, he just did everything, and from ball one, which was so crucial.
One more point, you talk about Murali has more wickets, but Murali didn't have a Glenn McGrath, right? You've got a Glenn McGrath who's got 500 wickets, which means that the opportunity of taking more wickets has gone because you've got a formidable bowling Glenn McGrath taking them, because you can only take 20 wickets in an innings, in a match, sorry.
So we're looking at our last position then in the lineup now, and it looks like it's a split between Murali or Dale Steyn. So which way, gentlemen, are you thinking that we should go? Bearing in mind that we've got Jack Callis in the team as well.
Because I picked both of them, so I think I'll let the other guys chip in on who they want. Fair.
See, I never pick Steyn, although Steyn is a world-class player. Unfortunately, his career was curtailed. I just like the fact that as a skipper, I'm getting a Steyn-like bowler in McGrath, Wasim, Gilchrist, Callis. But to throw the ball to Murali, yeah, he's got hundreds of wickets in Sri Lanka, and he's very strong at home, as are most bowlers, to be fair, stronger in their home conditions. The man's got like 10 fers for fun. Now I don't know which teams he's got 10 fers for, but he's got 65 fifers I've made a little note of, and like 20 plus 10 fers, and that's a lot of wickets. And I doubt they're all going to be at home. I just think that to bowl Warne and Murali in tandem in a game, he's going to bowl out teams, many teams. Doesn't matter where in the world you're playing. And I'd say it doesn't matter what day you're playing either. It gives you as a skipper so much more opportunity to win games having those two in your team. Whereas if you throw the ball to Steyn, yes, he's quick, yes, he can reverse. But if the conditions are not that conducive to his kind of bowling, or, he's got a bit of a tweak or whatever, and he's not on full flow, then you're kind of, it's close. It's tough to leave either out, but I'm sticking with my the spin king duo to win me a game.
Well, if we're sticking with Murali, our lineup looks at the moment like this: Hayden, Graham Smith, Ricky Ponting, Sachin Tendulkar, Brian Lara, Jacques Callis, Adam Gilchrist, Shane Warne, Wasim Akram, Glenn McGrath, and Muttiah Muralidharan. Now that means that Rahul Dravid has not made it into this team. Is there any way we can fit him into this?
12th man.
I would drop Sachin Tendulkar for Rahul Dravid. Like I said,
exactly.
He's the best Indian Test batsman. Yeah. But see, the thing is, it's difficult to compare Ponting to Tendulkar to Lara, because they all played different attacks, different times, different pitches. When Sachin Tendulkar and Rahul Dravid in Test match cricket played in the same conditions on the same day against the same bowling attack, in my opinion, Dravid was the better batsman in Test cricket.
Depends where, though, doesn't it? If you look at Australia, that's certainly not true, because obviously Tendulkar's record in Australia is much better than Dravid's. It depends. If it's England, it's no contest because it's Dravid all day long. But I just think if you look in Australia, it's different.
Yeah, and the fact that you mentioned that, because I've got an Australian opener in Hayden, right, and I've got a Smith who's got a decent attack everywhere. That's why I want my Dravid ahead of Tendulkar, because I need someone that can perform in England. You know, I think he averages over 60 in England. But no, look, Tendulkar's great, but all I'm saying for me, Dravid's a better Test player than Tendulkar, so I'd have Dravid ahead of Ponting anyway.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what, guys? This is the Bharat Army podcast. We can do whatever the hell we want.
Yeah.
So I tell you what, let's be controversial on this. Why not? Our final lineup looks like this: Matty Hayden, Graham Smith, Ricky Ponting, Rahul Dravid, Brian Lara, Jacques Kallis, Adam Gilchrist, Shane Warne, Wasim Akram, Glenn McGrath, and Dale
I can't agree
Steyn.
with that.
You've got Rav in tears now.
And our 12th man is some guy called Sachin Tendulkar.
To be honest, it's a very difficult job to pick.
It's incredibly difficult to pick.
11 out of so many great players.
And
Dravid's
we didn't
just unlucky
even...
that I was going to say Dravid's just unlucky that Ponting is the best cricketer of that era. You know, he just did so much. If there was no Ponting, we would have all said Dravid.
Well, do you know what? This could just be a deadlock, I think, on that position. But hopefully this team will be able to take on those alien overlords who are coming to take over the earth. Thank you very much, guys. That was an intense conversation about Test cricket. You know, for me, the greatest form of cricket out of all of them. I'm definitely a Test match guy. So I'm off now to go watch some more footage of Sachin Tendulkar and Rahul Dravid playing in Test matches to decide who is going to get into this team. But let us know who you think should get into the team. Let us know on at the Bharat Army on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. And give us a like, subscribe, share on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. That is all the time we have on this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. Stay home, stay safe, and we will see you on the next episode.
Cheers, guys.